Chapter 7, The Weight of Witness. Silence is not peace. That was the first thing I learned the morning after Emberfall slept. The second thing was worse. Silence can be a choice. I woke before dawn, eyes open in the dark, my body already braced for pain that didn't come. For a long moment, I lay utterly still, listening, not for footsteps or bells, but for the familiar pressure behind my eyes, the subtle ache that preceded prayer, the sense of something leaning into me from a distance too vast to name. It wasn't there. The absence felt so unnatural it raised gooseflesh along my arms. I had grown so used to the divine stream's constant proximity that I'd stopped registering it as sensation. It had become part of the architecture of being alive, like gravity, like the weight of my own bones. Losing it should have made me feel hollow. Instead, my chest felt quieter, not empty. Quiet. I turned my head slowly, watching Emberfall's pre-dawn shadows across the chamber walls. Pale stone, open windows, no tribunal iconography, no looming triumphant statue of Solyn, no carved commandments glaring down like laws made visible, just a simple room meant for sleep. And still, my mind kept trying to kneel. That startled me more than any vision, because I realized something I had never admitted aloud, not even in thought. Obedience had trained my body more deeply than belief had, even when I was alone, even when no one watched, even when the light itself did not press down on me. My muscles remembered how to submit. The tribunal didn't just demand loyalty, it cultivated reflex. I sat up, slow and careful, as if sudden movement might break the fragile calm. My feet found the cold floor. I drew a breath and listened to the air enter my lungs without resistance. Somewhere outside, Emberfall was waking. Soft sounds, cloth rustling, a distant latch, a muted voice carrying over stone. The city breathed like a living thing that did not fear being imperfect. My hand drifted, half asleep, toward the holy symbol on my chest. The sunburst of Solyn. I expected warmth. A faint answer. A whisper of dawn. I felt nothing. No resistance, no approval, no rebuke, just metal against skin. I curled my fingers around it, and in that instant I realized how much of my life had been spent trying to feel the light as proof that I was still worthy of it. A shameful thought rose unbidden. If the light stayed silent, then maybe I could do nothing and call it caution. Maybe I could wait. Maybe I could let Emberfall handle itself. Maybe I could return to Dawnspear with vague reports and plausible uncertainty, and let the tribunal decide what to do next. The thought was so tempting it sickened me. That was how obedience survived, I realized. By teaching you to treat responsibility like poison. I released the symbol and stood. If silence was freedom, then it was also burden, because now the choice was mine, and I could no longer hide behind command. The workshop. Bram Ironwalker's workshop sat on a lower terrace near the eastern stone steps, where the morning sun would reach first. I found it by scent before sight. Coal, oil, metal, and the faint tang of heat trapped in stone. The hammering started before I saw him. It wasn't loud. Bram wasn't the type to announce himself. The sound was steady, measured, like a heartbeat that did not panic. Each strike landed exactly where it meant to, without drama. When I stepped inside, he didn't look up. "You're walking quieter than yesterday," he said. I stopped, caught off guard. "I didn't mean to sneak." "Didn't say you did," Bram replied, still working. "Just said you're quieter." He lifted a piece of metal from the anvil, inspected it, then returned it with a careful motion. His hands were broad and scarred, the hands of a man who had learned that heat can be coaxed, not commanded. "What does that mean?" I asked. "That depends," he said mildly, "on whether you're trying to hide from something, or finally stopped running." The words landed too close to truth. I moved farther inside, the floor warm beneath my boots. The workshop was not clean in the way tribunal spaces were clean. There was dust in corners, tools laid out in lived-in patterns rather than arranged for inspection, shelves of half-finished work, a chair repaired more than once. The tribunal would have called it sloppy. To me, it felt like a place where time was allowed to leave marks. Bram set down his hammer at last and turned. His eyes were steady and dark, the eyes of someone who had seen belief become weapon and still refused to throw belief away. "Sit," he said, nodding toward a bench. I did, automatically. Then I caught myself, still obeying without thinking, and a faint flush of shame rose in my neck. Bram didn't comment. He simply fetched a cloth and wiped soot from his hands. "How's your symbol?" he asked. "Cold," I answered. "Good." I stared. "Good." Bram shrugged. "Cold metal is honest. Warm metal is complicated." He reached for my gauntlet, the one with Solyn's blessing etched into the inner ridge. His touch was careful, not reverent, but respectful, like a man handling something that mattered without pretending it was sacred simply because others called it so. He ran a thumb along the joint, where divine reinforcement had once flowed freely during combat drills, where healing had once come when I thought of it, quick and clean, like a reflex. "The light doesn't like being coerced," Bram said. My throat tightened. "You've seen this?" "Yes," he replied, and no. He met my gaze. "I was a tribunal cleric once," he said quietly, "before I became a blacksmith, before I became whatever I am now." That startled me, though it shouldn't have. I'd already felt it in him, the way he spoke of faith like something personal rather than institutional, the way he never said the tribunal without a faint tightening around the eyes. "You left," I said. "I was pushed," he answered, and there was no bitterness in it, only fact. "But yes, I left." He moved to a drawer and drew out a pale ingot etched with old runes, half filed away. It looked like something sacred that had been forced to become mundane. "This was once part of a paladin's blade," Bram said. I leaned forward. The rune pattern was ancient, older than Dawnspear's standardized scripture. It didn't carry the tribunal's polished symmetry. It looked hand done, personal, like someone had carved meaning into it rather than decree. The light stopped flowing through it after a disagreement. Bram continued. "A disagreement," I echoed. He snorted, a quiet sound. "That's what the tribunal called it. The paladin called it refusal." Cold slid down my spine. "What did he refuse?" I asked. Bram didn't answer immediately. He set the ingot down, as if it weighed more in memory than in metal. "Sit tight," he said. Then he did something that surprised me more than any confession. He began to tell a story. Bram. The flashback. "It was 20 years ago," Bram said. "I was still wearing tribunal white, still living inside the spires, still convinced that if I performed rites perfectly enough, the light would reward certainty." His voice stayed even, but his hands, when he clasped them, revealed the tension beneath, fingers interlocking too tightly, knuckles whitening. "I was assigned to a cleansing," Bram continued. "Not an exorcism, not a battle. A cleansing." They used softer language then, too. I said nothing. The word cleansing had always sounded holy in scripture. Clean, necessary. Bram's gaze drifted to the window, to the pale line of dawn beyond Emberfall's terraces. It was a village on the western ridge, he said. Small, poor. The kind of place the tribunal forgets exists until it becomes inconvenient. There was an illness, not plague, hunger, cold, the kind that makes people desperate. My stomach tightened. A local priest sent word to Dawnspear, Bram said. He said the people were refusing tithes. He said they were questioning why the temple storehouses stayed full while children starved. He said they were speaking against the light. Bram's mouth twisted faintly. Those words don't mean what people think they mean, he said. They're not descriptions. They're triggers, I swallowed. So the tribunal sent paladins. They sent paladins, Bram confirmed. And they sent clerics. And they sent scribes to write the official record before we arrived. My breath caught. Before, Bram repeated. The story was already decided. He looked at me then, eyes sharp. This is what the tribunal is, he said. Not an order that discovers truth, an order that stabilizes it. They choose the shape that preserves authority. Then they carve reality until it fits. I felt something in me recoil. Not because I didn't believe him, but because part of me did. Immediately, like a bruise pressed, Bram continued. When we arrived, the village did not look like heresy, he said. It looked like exhaustion, like people who had prayed until their voices cracked and then realized prayers didn't fill bellies. He paused, and for a moment his voice roughened. There was a mother, he said. She held her child. The boy was thin as kindling. She begged the paladins for food from the temple stores. The paladin in charge told her that need was a test of devotion. Bram's jaw tightened. She spit at his boots, Bram said simply. I flinched at the image. In tribunal doctrine, spitting at a paladin was practically spitting at Solyn himself. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. The paladin drew his sword, Bram said, and the light answered him. He said it like a wound. He didn't strike her, Bram went on. Not then. He said she would be made an example. He said he had received a command. My throat went dry. A command to what? Bram's eyes held mine. To purge the village, he said. The words hung between us like smoke. They called it mercy, Bram continued, voice low. They said it would prevent the spread of doubt. They said it would protect the greater faith. His hands clenched, then loosened as if he was forcing himself not to break something. I remember looking at the paladin's face, Bram said. He wasn't cruel, he was relieved, because if it was divine command, then the responsibility wasn't his. A sick recognition twisted in my chest. Bram leaned forward, voice quieter. I asked to hear the command myself, he said. I performed the rite of confirmation. I listened for the echo, and I whispered. Bram's eyes flickered. It was fractured, he said. Like a voice trying to force itself through a door that was closing, like something shouting through water. My hands went cold. I told him it wasn't clean, Bram said. I told him we should wait, investigate, feed them, heal them. Bram's mouth curved without humor. He told me that hesitation was pride, the old phrase, the comfortable doctrine, the one that made doubt feel sinful. And what did you do? I asked. Bram stared at his hands. I refused, he said. The word was simple, terrible, brave, and the light. Bram's voice, caught for the first time, went silent. My breath hitched. The paladin took the silence as proof that the light approved of him alone, Bram said. He said the light had withdrawn from me because I questioned it. Bram looked up, and then he began the cleansing. I swallowed hard, throat burning. What happened to the village? I asked. Bram's gaze dropped. Fire, he said. Steel. Prayer, spoken like weapons. They killed the ones who resisted. They dragged the rest to the shrine and forced them to kneel until their knees bled. Bram's hands trembled once, barely. And when it was done, Bram said, the scribes wrote that the village had been corrupted by demons. I felt nauseous. No one in Dawnspear questioned it, Bram said. Why would they? The story was clean, convenient, safe. He leaned back slowly. I returned to the tribunal, he said. I argued, I demanded a record review. I presented what I'd felt in the stream. And, I whispered again, Bram's eyes hardened. The justiciar who heard me smile, Bram said. He told me I was spiritually fatigued. He told me I should rest. He told me that doubt often feels like discernment. I knew that phrase. Everyone did. Bram nodded toward me, as if reading my recognition. Then he showed me the revised rites, Bram said. The clarified versions. The ones that removed old language about conscience and replaced it with obedience. My pulse pounded. They were rewriting faith, Bram said softly. Not because the gods demanded it, because control did. He exhaled. I left that night, he said. I walked out with nothing but my hammer and whatever scraps of belief I could salvage from the ashes. He looked at me steadily, and I swore something else. Bram said, not to a justicar, not to a decree, to a person. Arian, I said. Bram nodded once. She was younger then, he said. Not yet Oracle, but she was already stubborn, already unwilling to let truth become comfortable. He leaned forward, voice quiet and firm. I came here because Emberfall is one of the last places that still remembers the difference between faith and obedience, Bram said. And because if the tribunal is doing now what it did then, only bigger, then the world is going to burn unless someone refuses loudly enough for others to hear it. My throat tightened. And you think that someone is me, I said. Bram didn't smile. I think you might be, he said, and I think they've noticed. The temptation to hide. I left Bram's workshop with soot on my fingers and a heaviness in my ribs that had nothing to do with armor. His story walked with me. It wasn't just the cruelty. It wasn't just the rewriting. It was the way the paladin in the story had felt relief. Because I recognized it. I recognized the part of me that wanted a command to make my choices for me. Even when the command was monstrous. That recognition made me feel dirty. I found Marin near the terrace railings, watching the lower streets with a soldier's stillness. You're thinking loudly again, she said without looking at me. Everyone keeps saying that, because it's true. I leaned on the railing beside her. The city below was calm, but not unaware. People moved with purpose. Apprentices carried bundles. A healer crossed a courtyard with quick steps. The air felt like it did before a storm, clear but strained. Bram told me why he left the tribunal, I said. Myron's jaw tightened. Let me guess, they called it fatigue. Yes, they always do. She said, fatigue, instability, spiritual weakness, anything but truth. I hesitated, then said the thing that had been clawing at me since dawn. Part of me wants to go back to Dawnspear, I admitted. Not because I believe Malric, not because I want to obey. Marin finally looked at me, eyes sharp. Then why? Because if I go back, I said, voice rough. Then this becomes the Tribunal's problem again, not mine. Silence stretched. Myron's gaze didn't soften, but something in it deepened. That's the reflex, she said quietly. The reflex. To hand the weight back to authority, she said. To say, someone else will decide. I swallowed. I hate that I feel it, I whispered. Marin's mouth twisted. I hate that you only feel it now. I flinched. She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. Because the truth was, she'd felt it, too, once. And she'd obeyed. We stood together, both of us haunted by the same question. If obedience can be hijacked, what does it mean to be good? Oh, the spy. I saw him again at midday. I noticed him first because his prayer was too clean. Emberfall's prayers were messy, human, spoken with pauses and trembling hands, and the occasional curse muttered under breath when life hurt too much to make reverence easy. This man's prayer was polished like tribunal marble, every syllable correct, every gesture precise. No listening after he finished, no waiting for the answer, because he wasn't praying to be heard. He was speaking to be transmitted. The pressure returned behind my eyes, thin and sharp, like a needle sliding into the seam of my thoughts. Caelan appeared at my shoulder, as if drawn by the same sensation. He's broadcasting, he murmured, not praying. I watched the man's hands. A faint shimmer clung to his fingers. Not light, not quite. Something like residue after a miracle that hadn't been consensual. Can you stop it? I asked. Caelan's jaw tightened. Not without tipping our hand. The spy finished, lowered his hands, and walked away calmly through the crowd like a man who knew no one would stop him. They know, I said. Caelan didn't disagree. How long? I asked. Caelan's gaze tracked the man until he vanished behind a column. Hours, he said. Maybe less. The way he said it made my stomach drop. Hours meant no time for negotiation, no time for careful plans. Hours meant correction squads. Hours meant the tribunal choosing violence because violence was faster than truth. Ariane's unsentimental mercy lady. Ariane met me on the upper terrace. Before I could seek her out, she looked less like an oracle in that moment, and more like a woman who had carried an impossible burden for too long without dropping it. You felt him, she said. The spy, I replied. She nodded once. Yes, you let him pray in your city. I let him reveal himself, she corrected gently. There's a difference. I clenched my hands on the railing. They're coming, I said. Yes, to take you, I added. Ariane's eyes held mine. They're coming to take the narrative, Caelan. I'm simply the easiest symbol to control. The words were calm, not cold, clear. If they reach you through me, she said, I will not survive. I stared at her. You say that like it's weather. Because it is, she replied. Storms are not moral. They are predictable. The tribunal will do what it has always done. I swallowed. And what should I do? Ariane's voice softened, but only slightly. Do not mistake my calm for permission to hesitate, she said. I have watched men like Malric shape fear into law. I have watched paladins obey because obedience felt safer than conscience. Her gaze sharpened. You are not here because you are safe, she said. You are here because you are dangerous to them. I felt something in my chest twist. Dangerous, I echoed. Yes, she said, because you can still choose. The first flicker of Solyn. It began with bells, not Emberfall's bells. Those rang freely, unevenly, human. These were tribunal bells, distant, precise, out of place. The sound traveled through stone and bone alike, setting my teeth on edge and raising the hairs at the back of my neck. Bram emerged from a doorway below, eyes narrowed. "That's not a summons," he said. "That's a sanction." And then the divine stream lurched. For the first time since Dawnspear, I felt Solyn again. Not whole, not radiant, a flicker, strained and bruised, like dawn behind storm clouds. The sensation hit me behind the eyes and in the sternum, simultaneously, a pressure that did not crush but pulled, as if something was trying to reach me through a narrowing gap. My breath caught. Solyn. I hadn't realized how much a part of me still wanted to hear him until the faintest echo returned. But it wasn't clean. It came layered. There was Solyn's familiar warmth. Thin, trembling, like a hand trying to hold on to me without enough strength. And beneath it, something else, a harder pressure, a deliberate shove, a command-shaped force pushing into the space Solyn's voice should have filled. The two tones overlapped, fighting, and in that struggle I heard something I had never heard from Solyn before. Regret, not spoken as a word, felt like a bruise. My vision swam, the terrace blurred. Then a voice echoed, not through air, but through my bones. "Caelan Dawnspear," it said. It used my full name the way tribunal decrees used it. "By authority of the Radiant Tribunal, you are ordered to submit." The word hit like a hammer. Submit. My knees almost bent. Not from fear, from training. The reflex rose up through my muscles, ancient and automatic, the way a soldier flinches at a shouted command, even when he knows it's coming. For a heartbeat, surrender felt like relief. If I submitted, then the next choice wouldn't be mine. If I submitted, then I could stop holding the weight. I tasted copper. I clenched my jaw until it ached, and beneath the tribunal's pressure, I felt Solyn again. Faint, strained, almost drowned out. Not commanding, not approving, not pushing me to kneel, just present, like someone trapped behind a door, pressing a palm to the wood. I realized then Solyn was not absent. He was constrained, and the tribunal was using his authority like a mask. I didn't know if Solyn was too weak to stop it, or too ashamed, or bound, but I knew this. The voice ordering submission was not the same thing as the God who once taught me justice. "I cannot," I said aloud. The pressure spiked, furious. "Compliance will be enforced." My vision narrowed, dark at the edges, and that was when Solyn flickered again, stronger this time, not as command, but as a fractured impression. A blade held back, a hand trembling, a sunburst cracked, a whisper that felt like apology, not words, but intent, and it landed in me like a seed of grief. I wasn't just disobeying the tribunal. I was disobeying the theft of my God's voice. That thought steadied me. I straightened. I did not kneel.